If you conceptualize God as not a person, not a separate entity, not an anthropomorphic deity, but as the creative source of all that is, it's pre-gender, and it is infinite. It's infinite love, it's infinite life, it's infinite principle, it's infinite law, it's infinite truth, it's infinite soul, it's infinite spirit, and it's infinite good. And there's no opposite. If you can just think for a moment that there's no opposite to the infinite. You can't have infinite and finite at the same time. In this world of three dimensions is by definition finite. But in the infinite experience of the universe, in God's world, if you will, heaven as it's called in the Psalms, there is no separation. There are no finite experiences. So we would say, for all intents and purposes, that our experience here in the third dimension is an illusion. It's not reality as God sees it. And again, when I say God, I'm talking about Father, Mother, God. I'm talking about not a Father God up in the sky, not a patriarchal deity. I'm talking about pre-gender. I'm talking about the true source of all life, beyond personality, beyond body, all of that, the infinite. So when we are living in a finite experience, we would call it an experience of an illusion here. Now, that doesn't mean that what we experience here isn't real. So be very clear that just because we are acknowledging the illusory nature of this dimension doesn't mean that we are saying that your experiences here are illusory. You know, ultimately they are, but while you're experiencing them, they're not. You know, your problems are your problems, your pain is your pain, your story is your story, your experience is your experience. So from a magical point of view, the idea is that we allow the infinite to inform our experience of the finite. In other words, when we appear to have the need for change in the finite world, in the three-dimensional world, most of us run in and try to fix things. We try to change things because we feel that that's the only way that we're going to get what we need. So, but we would say that's akin to rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. I mean, what we are capable of understanding is very finite as well. So when we try to change things to make things better in the three-dimensional world, oftentimes we come up short. But the infinite will never come up short. The infinite will never come up short. So when there is something happening in our experience that we say, this isn't good, what we can do is we can connect with the infinite and claim that it is being changed to good. We can literally claim the good where we don't experience something good. We can say, I let infinite intelligence turn this into good. And that's a wonderful mantra. And you don't have to believe me. You can experiment with your own life by using this or something similar. So whatever you're experiencing in your world, if it appears to not be good, you can connect to that infinite intelligence and let go, relinquish the experience to that infinite intelligence and allow it to be transformed for you. And it's simply the act of doing so. That's your only responsibility. You're not responsible for changing it to good. So if something is occurring in your life and it just doesn't seem good at all, you can take a stand. You can stand up to that and say, I let infinite intelligence turn this into good. I let infinite intelligence turn this into good. Only good can come from this, is another way of saying that. From our dark magic course, we have a threefold incantation. We say, only good can come from this, Only good will come from this, and only good now comes from this. Only good can come from this. Only good will come from this, and only good now comes from this. And what you're doing when you're doing things like that is that you are focusing your mind. You're tuning the dial on your radio inside your mind to the frequency where healing can occur, where good does occur. Because again, in this three-dimensional world, everything's finite, but the infinite doesn't have those finite blocks. There are no restrictions to the infinite. So it's really just a matter for us in the three-dimensional world of changing the dial, changing the frequency, changing the vibrations where the healing can occur. So you can't expect healing to occur from the level of vibration of the disease. And when I say disease, I don't necessarily mean physical disease only, although that is included. I'm talking mental disease. Anytime there is something in our lives in which there is pain or which there is evil that we perceive, it's due to some sort of dis-ease in our mind, some sort of lack of ease, some sort of problem in our own thinking. We're not blaming ourselves for the problem, but we recognize, whoa, somehow there's a problem with the vibration that I'm tuned to here. So rather than trying to fix this problem, rather than going into the problem and trying to think that I can, of my own self, figure out how to fix this, what I need to do is tune my mind to the frequency where the solution already exists. That's a very different way of looking at problems, isn't it? The idea that my problem has been solved. Every problem comes with its own solution. There is nothing that I can experience on this plane where there isn't already a solution. But thinking that I can come up with a solution is going to cause me more frustration because I'm trying to create a solution. So rather than doing that, I'm going to take my own self out of the equation for a minute and recognize that my only job is to change the channel, is to fine-tune the frequency. And so I can do that by simply making a decision. I don't have to have any special skills other than the massive power of my decision, which was given to me at my creation. And I can say, infinite intelligence, I now let you turn this into good. I now let infinite intelligence turn this into good. And I don't need to know. It's not my responsibility to even know what that good will look like, to know what that good is going to be, how it's going to manifest. I don't need to come up with any aspect of the solution whatsoever on my own. I simply need to make a decision that infinite intelligence knows the answer, and therefore I'm going to allow the answer to manifest through this situation. I don't need to get involved. I don't need to interfere. I simply need to make the choice. When you have a diagnosis, let's say, when you have a diagnosis, the first thing, what do? Most people go online and they start looking up what that diagnosis means, right? And they get all kinds of interesting data, which does the opposite usually of making them feel more peaceful and more certain about their condition. Usually it makes them more upset and more upset and more upset. Sometimes they'll go to a support group. That's probably a little better of an idea than to just go willy-nilly and start researching as if you have the capability of understanding, all of the ins and outs of the medical condition that you've been diagnosed with. But what you can do immediately, instead of all of that, is start where spirit is and say, well, wherever there's a problem, the solution's already there. And now I don't need to know what the solution looks like. I don't need to know how the solution will come about. All I need to know is that I am willing to tune my mind to where that solution exists. And so I can say, infinite intelligence, I allow you to turn this into good for me now. I allow infinite intelligence to turn this into good for me now. Only good can come from this. Only good will come from this. Only good now comes from this. Only good comes from this. So in keeping our mind focused on that thought, we're not suppressing our fears. We're not going into denial and saying, well, all I have to do is say only good will come from this, and then I don't need to take my medication, or I don't need to go to the doctor, or whatever. Contrary to that, we take that thought into whatever needs to be done, and we do what is in front of us to do, divinely guided and led. One time in a seminar on healing magic, I talked about, don't just go off your meds. Don't just do a healing spell and then just stop taking your medication. Let's go to the opposite end of that spectrum, and we'll take our medications and we'll place them on the altar. And we'll consecrate those medications so that they become part of God's plan, rather than thinking that we can do healing magic and then decide what to do. Instead, we're going to just take all the stuff that the doctor tells us to do, and we're going to give it to God. We're going to give it to infinite intelligence. Is probably a better way of saying that, because sometimes the word God has a lot of emotional charge. But we're going to give this to infinite intelligence. We're going to say, here you go. I'm doing my healing spell, and here's the doctor's procedures. Here's what the doctor wants me to do. Here's the medications that the doctor is giving me, and we want infinite intelligence to turn all of this to good for us. And then what we're doing is, not only when we take the medication are we having something that we experience on the physical plane, whatever that medication is designed to do. If for some reason the doctor maybe was on the wrong track, something will happen and the medication will be changed. Or maybe something happens and the doctor refers you to another specialist that has a better understanding. Because you're not saying, instead of modern medicine, I'm going to magic. You're saying, I'm using magic to make sure that my doctor's hands are guided, my surgeon's hands are guided, that I'm getting the right kind of treatment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You might also be, led to some alternative treatments that you do in addition to your Western medical works, et cetera. So when you do this kind of work on any problem, not just medical, and you say, I allow infinite intelligence to turn this into good, sometimes the problem just disappears. Sometimes it's like a puff of smoke. That's true. But sometimes it's not that. Sometimes you are then led to the next step and the next step and the next step. And you're not making decisions all by yourself. You're not doing things like, well, since infinite intelligence is on it, I'm going to stop taking my medication, or I'm going to stop paying my bills, or I'm going to stop going to work and expect a basket of money on my doorstep. No, you're taking every little thing one step at a time as it's shown to you. When you come up in front of whatever it is in front of you, you are asking by saying, infinite intelligence is guiding me now, is guiding me in this step, and is guiding me every step along the way. So when infinite intelligence is turning something into good, sometimes it just, like I said, sometimes it just happens. But usually it means that there's steps for you to take. But you don't think about the future. You don't think in terms of making a big plan for yourself. You take things as they come, one step at a time, being divinely guided and led. And you notice that you get through these problems very swiftly, and those solutions just come to you as a result of tuning your mind to the place where the solution already exists. And it's always a very peaceful experience. It's always a very, very peaceful experience. Remind yourself that peace is your goal. Peace is your goal in any situation, because peace brings along with it everything that's necessary in order for that peace to be maintained. You're not going to have peace while you have pain in your body. So the relief of pain is going to be part of the package when you go for peace. You're not going to have peace if you can't pay your rent. So paying your rent is going to be part of the package when you go for peace. When you allow that peace to be your guide, when you allow peace to be your goal, then you recognize that that's very powerful. It's not like, oh, well, I can't get anything that I want, but at least I have peace. No, it's the opposite. If you go for peace, everything you want is included. But a lot of times we don't know what we want. We just think we do. A lot of times, and we've talked about this many times, but it bears repeating, a lot of times the ideas that we have about what's going to make us happy are not accurate. So when you are doing any kind of magic, if your first goal is peace, then you're protected from creating forms and experiences that are actually going to hurt you, or that are not going to be good for you, or which are going to waste your time or cause you great disappointment. You've had experiences like that, right? Where you've gotten what you wanted and you thought, what was I thinking? So there can be gain in that because you learn. But ultimately, if you say, wait a minute, ultimately what I want is peace. Now, I think I want this. I think I want that. I think this would make me happy. That's great. Include those things in your visualization. But remind yourself constantly, as we've said many times before, this or something better. This or something better. Because infinite intelligence is going to turn this into good for me right now. I allow infinite intelligence to turn this into good for me right now. And then you're just open and receptive to what that good might look like. Most of the time, it's something that you didn't even know was possible for you. You didn't even know that thing existed. So how could you have visualized it? How could you have come up with it? How could you have planned for it? You wouldn't have known about it. So just allowing yourself to pull yourself away from it, to take your hands off the situation for a second and recognize, wait a minute, I'm tuned to the wrong station here. I'm going to tune to the solution by telling myself, I allow infinite intelligence to turn this into good for me right now. And then I'm open and receptive to the ideas that infinite intelligence presents to me. And sometimes those ideas come directly into my mind. Sometimes they're signs and omens. But whatever it is, I'm certain at every turn what to do. And if I don't know what to do, I hold off on acting and ask and say, infinite intelligence is turning this into good for me. I am guided and led every step of the way. I know what to do, and I don't act until I feel certain that I'm doing the right thing. And you will know. Now, sometimes what you can do, if you have an idea like, okay, I'm at a fork in the road, which way do I go, left or right? You can use little techniques like you put one in your left hand and one in your right hand in your mind, and then whichever hand rises up and feels the lightest, that's the choice that you're going to make. You can do all kinds of things like that. You could use a divination. You could use all kinds of tools if you need to if you're stymied, if you don't know. But you always lead with the thought, infinite intelligence is guiding me now. Every step of the way, I always know what to do. I'm guided and led by the power of the infinite, by the power of the infinite. And infinite intelligence, I allow you to turn this into good for me right now. And you keep that mantra going and notice what happens. Just notice what happens. And you can prove it to yourself, but you also need to allow yourself to have faith that it is possible. Because if you're coming from the, oh yeah, prove it to me point of view, there's limited benefit that can be had because your goal there is not peace. Your goal is not the solution to your problem. Your goal is to be proven. And usually when you have a goal to be proven, it's because you would rather be proven that your cynicism is accurate. And so you'll be able to prove that to yourself by saying, see, none of this works. So if you have faith that this will work, then you are going to be on the beam of that faith, and then that faith will prove itself to you. And how do you get faith? By trying it, doing your best at every turn to ask for the recalibration of your vibration to the frequency of the solution rather than the frequency of the problem. And you just do it over and over and over again. And notice every step along the way how things are improving. And that should be proof enough to you. So you can start out with small things if you want to, things that are within somewhat your sphere of influence until you build up the faith, till you build up enough proof for yourself that this is true. And then you can start working on the larger problems in your life. Okay, you never want to feel like you're putting yourself out on too much of a limb because that can cause disappointment. So start small if you need to, but it shouldn't take you long before you understand that infinite intelligence does have the solution to whatever the problem is, and that you can claim that solution in any moment. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me today. I really appreciate you being here. Until next time, blessed be.